was loud, sounded like explosions. And
Oh,
so I'm telling my friend, yeah, I'm hearing all this, explosion sound and all
uh-huh.
of that. He goes, yeah, it's an earthquake. Don't worry about it. Okay.
It sounds like people are just used to it everywhere. You mean in Washington that
Yeah.
you experienced an earthquake?
Yeah. They had the Washington Cathedral damage. They had that. They had the Washington Monument closed for a short time. They had to redo the inside, the
The whole.
stairwells and the elevators and all of that. So,
That must be a big
yeah, it
one.
was a pretty big deal.
Oh, I see. I see. Okay, let's start. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to
Okay.
Shannon's Forum. Today is April 15th, and right now it's our time here in West Coast is 12:04. Well, thank you for joining us, and this is our dear friend Tom. Tom, how are you? So nice to see you.
I'm I'm fine. Great to see you.
Thank you. Tom, we have lots of questions for you. It's a very important international and uh, um, something involved American people, American law, and American judges, which is critical and very, very concerned by so many people. Okay, so the first question is about the guy who is MS-13 member. He was sent back to his homeland, his hometown, and then American judge asked Trump administration to take him back from his hometown. And they said he is wrongly deported to his hometown. So this is a big issue these couple of days. What do you think about that?
It, I think it's a bogus issue that is being stirred up by the Democrats and the liberals. First of all, under the laws of deportation, um, when you're deporting somebody because you don't want them in your country, and they don't have to be criminals, they just could be undesirable if you don't want them.
Mhm,
But when you deport them, you have two options. You can
mhm,
deport them to the last country they were in before they came to our country,
mhm,
which for a lot of people would be like Mexico, crossing the
mhm,
Mexican border.
mhm,
They can be deported to Mexico. Or they could be deported to, if they know where they're a citizen of, deported to their home country of citizenship.
mhm,
In this case, Garcia is a citizen of El Salvador.
mhm,
And so when they say that he was mistakenly deported, well, had already been in the last couple of years two deportation orders by judges to
mhm.
send him out. And the thing about that is they keep saying he had to be sent somewhere other than El Salvador. Well, that's ridiculous. He's from El Salvador. That's his country of citizenship. So
Right,
why
right.
they're making that the issue that they're making it, I don't know. But normally, if you're being deported, you would like to go back to your country so your family can visit you in prison or whatever it might be.
Mhm,
Then you have a judge basically telling the Trump administration, go get him and bring him back.
mhm.
What? What?
Yeah, you know.
And then the president of El Salvador was in the White House yesterday with Trump, Bukele, and the reporters raised that question with Trump, and he deferred it to Bukele and said, "Okay, what do you think of that?" And he's like, "There is no possible way we would try to take this person and sneak him back into the United States illegally. He's already been deported out of the U.S., so
Right.
we have no reason to do that, and we're not going to do it." And the
Mhm,
judge is kind of saying, "Okay, go get him." Well, that's not right either. So I think there's going to be more time wasted and money wasted in this whole issue, but it's ridiculous.
mhm,
And I
mhm.
think that, to me, the Democrats trying to tie themselves up to the issue of there should be hearings before anybody can be deported, due
Mhm,
process and all of that. But
mhm.
we have millions of people in this country illegally. Are we going to have millions of hearings
Right,
in millions of courtrooms? I mean, that whole thing is absurd.
right, right. So, I remember, Tom, last week the House has passed the HR 1526, which would restrict the judges from issuing the order to against presidential policies. So I just wonder, has this bill become a law yet? Or why these judges continually to give this kind of ridiculous.
I don't know. I don't know what the status is and why that would
Okay.
become law. This judge could do what he wants. And I think that that's the main decision and decisions that are going to come up to the Supreme Court are going to be around the fact that can a local district judge, even a district federal judge in Washington,
Mhm.
do they have the right to supersede
Yeah.
international law and
Right.
federal policy
Right.
and terrorism rulings
Mhm.
made by the president and by the administration of who has to be removed from our country? So
Mhm.
I think that that Trump will win these, but it will be a tremendous expense, time and money to
Mhm.
do it.
Mhm.
And the people that are pushing these things are just, I think, out of line, and it should be stopped.
Yeah, right. And also, I have a question regarding the right of these illegal immigrants. Do they have the legal right to stay here, to go through the processing, to have some due processing, something like that? Is this belong to legal immigrants or it belongs to
I don't
anyone?
think so. And I think a lot of legal scholars that I've heard talk about it say no. But apparently, you get some of these overly liberal judges, especially in Washington,
Mhm.
formerly appointed during Obama or Biden or somebody, and they're making up law as they go, and it
Mhm.
shouldn't be allowed. And so far, it's been allowed, and Trump has been patient,
Mhm.
showing that he's not a dictator. He's going to try to abide by
Mhm.
decisions when they require further court proceedings or whatever. So I don't think these decisions are going to stand in the long run. But if you remember Trump's first administration, all of these judges that came up with things that he can't do this and he can't do that, and it would go to court and they'd have to spend all this time and effort,
Mhm.
and the rulings favored Trump. And so
Mhm.
that's what you're facing now,
Mhm.
is many of these rulings are facing Trump again.
So they just, the Democrats have the patience. They want to do it again and again and again and again, even though they know that,
Yeah,
uh,
they do. They do. Yeah.
well, so then I heard the news that Trump administration keep doing what they are doing. They catch these illegal gang members and send them out of the American. So despite that, the orders are continued to issue to stop him to doing so. He just don't care. He just do whatever he needs to do.
I think, yeah, he's gonna have the law and precedent on his side, and he's going to do that. He's not going to throw off or eliminate his whole foreign policy,
Mhm.
especially regarding national security,
Mhm.
because they've already declared members of MS-13
Mhm.
as a terrorist organization. So
Right.
that means Gabriel himself,
Mhm.
a known member of MS-13, and you've had two different federal judges rule in the past couple of years that he should be deported.
Right.
So you already have judges saying, get him out.
Mhm.
So to have this one judge come back and say, no, not only you shouldn't take him out, go get him. And I think when that came up during the Trump Bukele meeting in the White House yesterday,
Mhm.
it was, I think, hard for the president of El Salvador not to laugh. But
Mhm.
we're not gonna take a terrorist
Right.
out of our country
Right.
and sneak him into yours. Are you kidding? Well,
So
apparently they're not kidding. They think that's what he should do.
yeah. To be honest, I really want to see some impeachment for these judges. These guys are not qualified at all. And they use
Yeah,
the
in the past, during my career, when it came to impeaching a judge,
right.
especially judges in Florida that were involved in protecting drug traffickers during the height of the cocaine importation
Mhm.
going into Florida. And during that time, judges, if they were found to be I'm sorry, conducting illegal activity like that,
Mm-hmm.
they were impeached. They were removed.
Mm-hmm.
And they could, that's the form of prosecution in
Sure,
the case of a federal judge.
sure.
So, yeah, they could be impeached, but it's just something that they're reluctant to do unless it involves an obvious
Mm-hmm.
criminal activity like drug trafficking or people smuggling or some of that.
Right, right, right. Exactly. So people know that American is a country by the law. We have every single law that maybe it's more than the other countries, all the other countries' law add together. But if we do not follow the law, it equals that we do not have the law. What's the difference? So the judge is not
Oh,
above
you're
the
right.
law.
You're right. What is the difference? Then we don't have law. We don't
Right,
have rule of law.
right,
Yep, that's
right.
true.
So yeah, that's what we need to do, and we need to do immediately. It's not just wait and see. There are so many facts are in front of our eyes, and people are just locking. More and more people are just express their concern about that. We need to see the actions as soon as possible. And Tom, also because you work in FBI for almost 30 years, and for 5 years you're the assistant director of FBI and involved in international affairs of FBI. So you know the whole world pretty good. And I have a question regarding the war, Ukraine and Russian war. We saw the news that the gentleman, his name is Steve Wyckoff. He is the representative of President Trump, and he and Putin, he's in Moscow and have a conversation with Putin for 5 hours. That is a long time. And he come out and then said Putin is ready for permanent peace. So, what do you think? It's a very big step for the final peace between Ukraine and Russia.
Well, I think it could be. And I think that Putin probably wants the peace. And
Mhm.
when Zelensky met with Trump in the White House, he was the one that obstructed it. When
Right.
Trump was trying to make a deal and say, okay, stop the war. And Trump basically was giving, without telling Zelensky, we're going to support your country, and because he's already said he wasn't going to continue that.
Mhm.
But when it came to precious metals and minerals in the ground and those type of things, Trump said, okay, you sell us that material, and
Mhm.
then we'll have people on the ground in Ukraine
Right.
working with it and mining it and using it for manufacturing. And then that'll stop Russia from attacking Americans doing that kind of work. So in other words, it would give Trump a cover
Mhm.
for the peace, for staying
Mhm.
in Ukraine and spending more money in Ukraine and development in Ukraine. And that would be a way of sneaking in our financial support to Ukraine without making it look like he was doing what Biden did and just give them all the money they want
Right. Right.
for nothing.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Right. So it seems like
I
that
think there's a
Putin.
lot of those discussions taking place, right?
Right. Right.
Go ahead.
So it looks like Putin is the one who want the peace more than Zelensky. And Zelensky
Well,
actually
Zelensky does not want peace.
no.
Zelensky is not even the legitimate president
Right.
of Ukraine.
Hmm.
He canceled the election and his
Right.
term expired a year or two ago.
Hmm.
So, and Zelensky knows in a way he's dead man walking.
Hmm.
If there's no war and there's no money coming in from the US to support a war, why should they keep him? Because he's
Yeah.
not elected. He's not an elected president.
Right.
And so really he could be taken out pretty easily, either as a not legitimate president. And then in the world of these kind of things where you're talking about wars and serious foreign policy,
Hmm.
he could easily end up being assassinated. So I think
Hmm.
he knows it.
Right. right. And yesterday or the day before yesterday, Zelensky openly asked Trump to come to Ukraine and to see what happened in Ukraine before he sit down with him to talk about the peace agreement. So what do you think about that? Do
Oh,
you
I
think,
think the waste of time. Trump doesn't need to go to Ukraine for any reason whatsoever.
right?
Um, there's no reason to continue the war. And Ukraine, Zelensky's only reason for continuing it, so he has an excuse to stay in power as the president or
Mm,
acting president or
mhm,
used to be president.
mhm,
So none of that's necessary. The only
mhm,
person that benefits from extending this war right now is Zelensky.
mhm.
The Ukrainian people don't. They're being slaughtered.
No.
The buildings, their infrastructure is being destroyed. Their
Mhm,
money's being wasted.
mhm,
And the only one that benefits is Zelensky as long as the U.S. keeps propping him up.
mhm. Yeah, right. Well, I have a chance to talk to one of my friends. He is in Moscow. He's a Chinese, but he's living Russia for over 20 years. And I talked with him on Sunday night and just asked him what's going on in Moscow. Everything is okay, or yeah, just give us some his thought about the wall. And he said, according to him, that Moscow is just very normal. People are doing their job and live their life. It's just very, very normal. So
Yeah.
not a big change. And people are wish to have a peace, that's for sure. But they're not scared about the wall. So it's really up to Zelensky to do his part. And I asked him, "Are you guys surprised to see that Zelensky is not have a very good conversation in White House?" And he said they know, the Russian people know immediately because they have their way to see the news. And I asked him, "Are you guys surprised?" Because we are kind of surprised. And he said, "No, we're not surprised. We know what kind of people Zelensky is. So it's really not surprise to us."
All right.
So, and he said he thought uh, uh, the world did not really understand what happened between Ukraine and Russia since 2014. He said the wall is not start from 2022. It start much early than that. And then he just said the
Well,
unfortunate.
it could be that they're being provided with more facts
Mhm,
accurately in Russia by their media than
mhm.
we are here all along, including now.
Right.
In 2014, we engineered a coup
Hmm.
and had the president of Ukraine, who
Hmm.
had a great relationship with Moscow,
Right.
and had him removed.
Hmm.
And then the second president installed by us, first the next one came in, then they had him removed. They had another one installed, and that was Zelensky.
Hmm.
So, that was the problem there is that we being the CIA and MI6 from the UK, engineered the coup, the
Hmm.
taking out of their president that was duly elected
Hmm.
and duly elected to have peaceful relations with Russia,
Hmm.
and we wanted him out.
Hmm.
And our engineer running that, at the State Department at the time with the CIA was Victoria Nuland.
Hmm.
And she's been an avowed warmonger for many, many years
Yep.
and still is. And
Hmm.
so, she wanted, and then the neocons in Washington and
Hmm.
in the military industrial, all of the people that profit from war
Hmm.
wanted that war with Russia and did not want peace, did not want any of that. And they got their wish, and they had their wish continuing. And
Hmm.
then Biden, whether he knew what was going on, probably did not. But people using Biden, as a tool, used Biden in a position to send money to Ukraine.
Right.
Now, Biden, he may have been aware, thanks to Biden, received much money from the Ukraine in corruption. The job
Hmm.
for Hunter Biden to work at the oil company that was already known to be a crooked operation,
Hmm.
All of the stuff, Biden just kept sending money,
Hmm.
and the people in the Ukraine, Zelensky and the people that control him, because again, Zelensky's a puppet, so they got him on a string. But Zelensky then and his people had all of this evidence against Biden of corruption.
Hmm.
So Biden keeps sending millions of dollars to them, then
Hmm.
later military equipment and you name it. And the officials in the Ukraine had enough information to convict Biden of a number of federal crimes.
Right.
And so that's how Biden avoided that. That when they asked for money, he gave them more money than they could use.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
then, of course, they had to use the money to buy their own personal mansions in other countries like Miami in the United States or Cyprus in the Mediterranean or along the Black Sea.
Hmm.
So Biden engineered all of this with the Ukraine to make money.
Hmm.
And he and his son, they got rich off of the corruption
Right.
of not only Ukraine's corruption, but US corruption on
Right.
behalf of the Biden family.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And my friend in Moscow, he also said that what the Ukraine did to the Russian people who live in Ukraine is unbelievable. It's horrible, horrible. But the world
Yeah.
just don't know. So he said this is a whole story. It's not just a
Well,
two.
how's the world going to know anything, really, with the corruption in the media? Everything starts too with the corruption of the media.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
none of these facts really get out. They don't get out to the general public.
Hmm.
So most Americans, if you even educated college graduates in the United States, if you ask them, when did the war start and who started it? It started in 2022.
Hmm.
Putin started it.
Right.
None
Yeah.
of the stuff that we engineered the coup in 2014
Hmm.
that's led to all of this, or that how much money Biden, we know the money Zelensky was pocketing and building his mansions with and all that,
Hmm.
but nobody pays attention to how much money Biden got,
Yeah.
the whole Biden family. So, yeah, Biden, Hunter, whether it's his brother, his children, whoever, it was just a massive money-making scheme going back to when Biden was vice president.
Hmm. Yeah. It's a long story. It's not.
Yeah, it's a long story. It's a lot longer than 2022.
Right, right, right. So hopefully more and more people will realize and people will open their own eyes. I just don't believe the narrative that mainstream media just feeding people. They're feeding people their narratives. They're not giving people the
Yeah,
fact.
yeah.
So that's yeah, you're right that media is a big problem right now. Huge
And they
problem.
still are. You look at the story of this guy Garcia that
Right.
was deported to El Salvador.
Mhm.
All of the mainstream media, and I've been watching news, about that for the last couple of days. Every story starts out with the Maryland dad that was illegally
I
deported to El
know.
Salvador.
Exactly. Is that crazy?
Yeah, it's crazy.
He's
You
not.
watch you watch
Imagine.
Carolyn Levitt on the White House briefing today. The
Yeah.
questions that come up from these media people on that issue.
Hmm. Yeah.
So I
It's a
think the best answer to all this was yesterday
Mhm.
when Bukele from El Salvador was in the White House, and one of the other you had all of these cabinet members from the U.S. in that meeting, and you had Steve Miller respond as advisor to Trump, respond to the issue
fantastic. Yeah.
of this deportation. And
Right.
he was fantastic.
Yeah.
And he discussed the whole history of this. This guy, the Maryland dad, is actually an MS-13 member. Two different U.S. judges in 2019 ordered him deported,
Hmm.
and that decision is still standing until he got taken out by Trump and sent to El Salvador with the other prisoners.
So
So
these
he was
people,
trying to debunk, I thought completely debunked the idea that this guy was mistakenly sent to El Salvador or illegally sent to that country or any of that. None of that was true.
Yeah.
He went through the deportation process.
Mhm.
Other judges in the court system, U.S. system,
Mhm.
ordered him deported in 2019.
Yeah.
And here we are 6 years later, and
Mhm.
people are still saying he's the Maryland dad. He's a good guy. What?
So remember, Tom, and every time when Trump gave a rally, he always point out to the mainstream media and said, liars, these are liars. And sometimes I just feel, wow, this is so brutal.
They
But
are.
more we know about the action of or the behavior from the mainstream media, the more I agree with President Trump. These are liars. These are intentional, just give the false information to the
Yep.
audience, to people, to cheat people. So it is, this is something we have to change. Otherwise, how can people just know the facts and follow the facts, right? And then I think this is why you're trying
Yeah.
so hard. You're doing your part. And thank you so very much for that. And also
Well, a
talking
lot of
about,
people are doing their part, so we'll see.
yeah. And also,
We'll
one
see.
thing, it's very interesting and maybe it's a very heavy and sad topic. It's about 9/11. Um, what do you think about 9/11? Do you think
I
it's,
think that there should be not congressional hearings or any of that. There should be a full presidential commission formed, uh, people on both sides of the House, and they should begin an investigation into what exactly happened. And I think that going back to 9/11, you had, people thought the planes hit the towers and the gasoline started the fire and melted the structure and the beams then collapsed and the two main World Trade Center buildings collapsed.
Mhm.
But there's never been an adequate explanation of how Building 7,
Yeah,
which was the square building about 3, 4 blocks away, why that collapse?
yeah,
And so, interestingly, Trump back then,
mm-hmm,
as a major contractor in New York,
right,
Trump said, as an experienced builder of these type of buildings, high-rise buildings,
mm-hmm,
he felt it was a controlled demolition
mm-hmm,
or a planned demolition,
right,
that it was not, there was no fuel that went 3 blocks over to Building 7. There
mm-hmm,
was nothing underground connecting Building 7 to the World Trade Center. And
mm-hmm,
the flight fuel, even in the main World Trade Center buildings, was not hot enough. And you had all these engineers on TV at the time even saying that the temperature it would take to melt the support girders,
right,
the structure, the steel structure, could not be obtained by jet fuel by itself.
yeah,
So that's when, and then, but they didn't want to do the crime scene investigation to see what's the material, what is the basis of the construction
mm-hmm,
collapsing. What
mm-hmm,
was thermite and other materials they found in that burned much
right,
hotter than
right,
jet fuel. But
right,
they didn't. They kind of quashed the investigation.
mm-hmm,
And interestingly, the commission to investigate the whole 9/11 was as rigged as the Warren Commission had been in the 1960s on the
ex-
Kennedy assassination,
yeah,
suppressing facts, not letting real experts testify,
mm-hmm,
hiding the truth, all of that. It
mm-hmm,
was very similar to that all over again.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
so, the accusation that many of the engineers that were running these major engineering company at the time were saying there needs to be an investigation here. These girders didn't melt because of jet fuel. That
yeah,
was not what brought these buildings down.
exactly.
The combustible material was already in that building, was already placed. And then you have the other allegations that have been made about the planes were flown by remote control. And they were not the hijackers were not skilled enough to be
Right.
able to fly
Mm-hmm,
jumbo jets at 700 miles an hour
mm-hmm,
and hit, because going that fast to try to hit those towers,
mm-hmm,
those towers would look like a strand of hair, you know
Right.
when you're in a plane trying to zero in on them.
Hmm.
And so many felt that the US had been working since the 1940s on remote control capability of planes like that. So the
Oh,
feeling was that those planes that they had that equipment put in them to fly remotely, and that some of the and individual instructors that talked about the 9/11 hijackers were saying they did not have the skill to do what was done, and that those planes had to be remotely controlled. So yeah, the hijackers may have killed the pilots and take, but the equipment, you know,
yep,
enabled somehow. So there's people advocating that needs to be investigated. The ability to fly those planes into such minuscule targets when you're going 700 miles an hour.
exactly. Exactly. I agree. I agree. Totally. And if this is
And the
something,
other motivation is that the it's guys like Dick Cheney, Rumsfeld, those guys, they wanted Americans to die and have this look like, Al Qaeda attacked us, and therefore that's it. Start the war on terror and pass laws, the Patriot Act, another thing, enable additional spying by the FBI on everybody that needed to be, and initiate then the effort worldwide to declare war on every terrorist organization, starting with Al Qaeda, in this case, bin Laden, but any other organization declared an enemy of the United States, then spend trillions of dollars and spend, all of this effort, even to this day, to wage the war on terrorists.
so
So
Dick,
therefore, the public had to be enraged that these guys attacked us, so we have to attack back.
hmm they make the story, they make the case.
Yep. Yeah.
So Dick Cheney and Rumsfeld, they are Republican, but they are
Yeah.
warmongers. That's horrible.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
they're warmongers. Absolutely.
Right, right. Whoa, so this is
Back during guys like them, if you want to go back to, let's say, the Kennedy administration, the CIA was proposing in the early part of the administration before Kennedy was killed that the CIA shoot down a U.S. aircraft with U.S. citizens on it, kill them all, and make it look like Cuba did it because they wanted an invasion of Cuba in the worst way.
mhm, mhm,
And, and at that time, Kennedy learned of it, killed that proposal. We're not going to do that. We're not going to kill U.S. citizens. So that is basically what a false flag is. You have an attack, you kill your own people, but you want other guys, it looks like somebody else did it. And then
right,
you want to declare war onto somebody else.
right. That's very dark. That's
Yeah.
really dark. But anyhow, facts talks. So we hopefully we can see the um complete investigation of 9/11. And I think people deserve it.
Yeah, the people deserve it, but it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. That's so sad. Okay. Yeah.
Well,
So,
the fix is in. The money is already being spent on
mhm,
enemies all over the world. And if we wipe out one enemy, we have to create new ones.
right.
Like right now, you know, Putin. All Putin's fault. We got to do that. We have to eliminate Russia.
Hmm. That's horrible.
Now, Putin's been in office 20 years,
Mhm.
and he's been trying to make peace and have a business relationship and all of this for many, many years. He tried to join NATO, 15, 20 years ago and was rejected. So, so he's never wanted to be at war with the United States. And even in the last 3 years now with the war in Ukraine, he has refrained from lobbing missiles in on top of US troops or any of that. So it's been very controlled on his part who's targeted.
Right. Exactly. So it looks like the American and Ukraine, of course, and Europe and most of the whole world are hijacked by some very evil people, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so people right now really wants to see some action, some great action from our side. That's why we have to talk about FBI and DOJ. Because I read an article from the Gateway Pundit yesterday and said Rudy Giuliani, Mike Flynn, and Tom Fuentes, these high-profile personnel, openly expressed their concern about Bondi and Cash Patel. So, are they just impatient or just like us? So,
Of course they're impatient. We're all impatient. But,
Mhm.
having overseen hundreds, even thousands of FBI investigations, organized crime, and around the world,
Right.
it takes time. And because of I think, the corruption of the FBI going back to Comey and Christopher Wray, these investigations are almost starting from day one, from scratch. So
Mhm.
normally you would have been accumulating evidence and all that, and then it's up to the analyst and the better agents to put it together into a prosecutive package. But that stuff takes time, and you can't just do that overnight, especially when you're starting at the bottom. And that's where these investigations, if you go back to Russiagate and all of that, Patel, Bongino have already said they're investigating all of that. Well,
Mhm.
now, investigating means they're conducting the interviews, they're gathering documents, issuing subpoenas all over the world to, our people and then our allies,
Mhm.
um, and get that information. So that type of information, that can take months and years to get. And it's been what, 100 days Trump's in office. You can't if somebody robbed a bank and shot the bank tellers and walked out on the sidewalk and threw his hands in the air, oh, you could probably prosecute that pretty quickly. But
Mhm.
in these cases, I'm talking about a lot of I've overseen these kind of cases where the investigation is very sophisticated, very time consuming, very difficult, and it's not as easy as people think. And I think even Bongino in the last couple of weeks has made a statements like this takes time, and
Mhm.
that everything that should be done is being done,
Mhm.
but it takes time to get the evidence packaged up. So I would
Mhm.
give them the benefit of the doubt right now.
Sure, sure. Yeah, and yesterday they
Patel and Bongino especially. Now
Mhm.
Bondi, a different story because I don't think she's overseen this level of complexity in federal investigations
Mhm. Mhm.
um, before. But I think the other people involved in it, and they're going up against all of this corruption that goes back to Hillary Clinton and those days when Comey was trying to suck up to her, and they should have prosecuted her and didn't.
Right.
Um, so there are many, many issues that need to be dealt with.
Right, right. Just like you mentioned, Bengino, he actually posted an update on X yesterday and said, I heard that some concern about our processing, our working efficiency, and he said we promise we'll do our best to finish our job. And then right now, he personally is not in Washington D.C. He went to different field office to talk to people there, and
Right.
still they are trying to build up a team, a good team, a core team to do the hard job. And he said, we are doing that every single minute. It's very hard, but it take time. Just like you said, it take time. And if you do not see something that you expect to happen, doesn't mean we did not do our parts. We are doing our job very, very, working very, very hard. So he thanks people's intent patient about that. And it really takes some time to see the result. And then about Bondi, there are, uh, I remember last week you mentioned that on DOJ, maybe it's more complicated than FBI. So I just wonder why you say that.
Well, the
Why?
reason is that the background investigation that FBI agents go through to get in the Bureau is
Mhm,
so extensive and so detailed. And
mhm.
that in and of itself can take a year or two to go through the backgrounds and be able to get in. But all of these attorneys at DOJ, who knows? Many of them were appointed during liberal, like the judges,
Right, right.
appointed by liberal presidents and liberal attorney generals, and they're kind of embedded there. And so it's going to take time to get those people out and get good prosecutors in.
Okay, it's just like FBI, right? Pretty similar.
Yeah, but it's the vetting that FBI agents go through, I would argue, is more than what it is for the attorneys that work for the Department of Justice. That's my opinion.
Okay,
Now, I'm
okay,
sure many of them would argue that that's not true.
mhm,
Well, we'll see. We'll see
okay,
what happens here.
okay. Sure. And you mentioned that you think Bondi is another story because maybe the job right now she's faced is much, much more complicated than his previous job. And I remember she is from Florida. She's AG of
Yeah.
Florida. So can you give us a little detail about how complicated compared to the federal level job, federal level AG to a state AG?
Well, it's still a federal position for the most part, but still, but the details of being the U.S. Attorney General
Mhm,
and overseeing the Department of Justice and all of the federal districts. Yeah, I think you have 96 federal districts, 96 U.S. attorneys, and then you have all of the FBI divisions under theoretically are supposed to be under the Department of Justice. Now,
mhm.
many have debated that over the years. Um, so you don't see much Department of Justice oversight or really, taking control like that, and especially in complex FBI investigations. So we're not talking about bank robbery cases or some of those type of issues, but some of these, especially the international ones,
Right.
um, the accusations that were made early, in fact,
Mhm,
that the FBI was working with MI6. And
mhm,
MI6, the British spy agency, James Bond, if you will, that
mhm,
they were using MI6 to do investigation and get around some of the restrictions in the US of
mhm,
what our people can do. So they
mhm,
would try to get them to engineer,
mhm.
the manufacture of evidentiary material and all of that. So
Mhm.
there's a lot involved in this. And I think the fact that you had so many people involved in obstructing the investigation from the beginning. So if you look at Russiagate, the 2, 3, 4 years that were spent
Right.
obstructing and accusing Trump of working for Putin
Mhm,
and listening to liars like Adam Schiff, who was on TV every day saying he's got the evidence and all that, which he
mhm,
never did. And
mhm,
then, here, that's the other problem is that you have fake media or crooked media. Then
mhm,
on top of that, crooked politicians.
mhm,
And then it's hard to get the truth out in the middle of that. And then voters don't know. So
mhm,
they just vote according to the party. So
mhm.
you look at California, with all of the accusations against Adam Schiff, how does he get elected U.S. Senator?
Yeah, I know. I know.
Maybe the same way Kamala got elected. But, you know, it's hard to have a decent system when you have people like that can just get elected to positions just because they have a D in front of their name.
Mhm. That's right. That's right. That's right. Yeah. People talk about a lot of the organization called Act Blue, which is a Democrats park, and they have so many criminal activities. So people are very angry and just hope that DOJ can come out and at least investigate the Act Blue because they have money laundering and some bad thing, just like white collar criminal. So I remember you actually very experienced at the white collar criminal investigation. So is it take a very long time to do that?
Sorry, you're kind of cutting out a little bit. Could you
Oh,
ask that again? You were cutting out.
yeah, it's the Act Blue. Do you know the organization? I think it's
Yeah.
owned by the Democrats. It's a PAC. They have a lot of criminal behavior, including money laundering and fake identification, etc. And this is kind of like a white collar criminal. So I know you have experience for that kind of investigation. I just wonder if that kind of thing take very, very long time to do, to investigate, to take action.
Yeah, oftentimes to get the evidence to do, to issue the subpoenas to the right people on the right issues, and then to have them comply, hopefully, instead of obstruct it like Hillary did. So to gather that kind of information and evidence does take time. I can
Mhm.
tell you the hundreds of organized crime cases worldwide that I oversaw, none of that goes quickly. None of it.
Mhm.
The
You
request for documents, just to get documents, can take months.
so easily month
Then
and
when you get the
year.
documents, then you go back to interview and question the people that generated them. That could take longer as well. So all of these kind of cases take a long time. They're very difficult, complex, time consuming. And the people on the other end are able to hire the best attorneys in the country.
Yeah.
They have the money and the means to do that,
Mhm.
to fight these cases, to fight the paper, to fight the request,
Mhm.
and make the case just go on and on and on, which they can do.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it's a long shot. We need to have more patience, basically, huh? Yeah, there are people are just say hi to you, Tom, and then Yui, I think she's asking a question. Tucker Carlson interview with Walton was a bomb for me, and at the time, Bin Laden was in Iran, not Afghanistan. So this gentleman come to Tucker Carlson's show and said that when 9/11 happened, Bin Laden is not in Iran. Actually, is in Iran, not in Afghanistan, meaning that the narrative that Bin Laden and his organization are involved for 9/11 is maybe not true. This is from the gentleman who's in Tucker Carlson's interview. But they launched the war in Afghanistan anyway. So this is the another question: why we launched the war to Afghanistan if Bin Laden is not in there? Can you hear me, Tom?
Well, the CIA had basically tracked bin Laden was very close to the border. It was in the mountains,
Okay.
and we had special units there, CIA and U.S. military, that tracked bin Laden there, that were intercepting his conversations on the phone while he was there. So they basically tracked him going into Pakistan and then Iran, but he ends up in Iran. So he ends up in a situation where he's very elusive, put it that way, and they don't really know for a long time where exactly he is.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I think he mentioned our audience just said that um when 9/11 happened, bin Laden is not in Afghanistan. He was actually in Iran. But US launched a war to Afghanistan, not Iran. So I think this is what she's saying. The whole thing is just a mess. And
Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't know if it is true that it's come from bin Laden's order to have the 9/11 attacked.
I think I think they pretty much had that
Uh-huh.
documented that he had done interviews where he had threatened the United States and on U.S. media. I
Mhm.
remember one that he did with John Miller from ABC News, um, who later became head of terrorism. He worked for the FBI for a while, then he worked head of terrorism for New York City Police Department. And I
Mhm.
think bin Laden then was kind of issuing his orders of what they were going to do and they were going to attack us. And
Mhm.
then you had the presidential daily brief that the president gets every day from the CIA. And that brief, a couple of months before 9/11, basically said bin Laden determined to attack the U.S. on U.S. soil. And
Mhm.
a lot of people just dismissed that and blew that off. But that was in the presidential daily brief. I want
Mhm.
to say maybe July or August, somewhere in that time frame, prior
Mhm.
to 9/11.
Mhm. Mhm. So this important information just being ignored.
Well, much of that was ignored by the Bush administration. So you had, uh, well, go back a little bit. Ashcroft becomes Attorney General,
Mhm.
and his basically, the FBI at the time had requested in the upcoming budget that year additional hundreds of linguists and agents to specialize on Al Qaeda and other Arabic speaking terrorist organizations.
Mhm.
Ashcroft rejected during the summer of '01.
Mhm.
He rejects the request and says that he's focused on guns and gangs. That the FBI is going to, if you want more agents to investigate street gangs and that type of thing in the U.S., okay, but don't talk to me about. So they did not approve it. Now, at
I,
the time, someone that I worked for and really, really respected, Tom Picard, became the acting director of the FBI. In June of '01, Louis Freeh leaves the FBI. So then the deputy director, Tom Picard, longtime bureau agent, great guy,
Mhm.
Picard becomes the acting director
Mhm.
until they can name a new director.
Mhm.
So he sends a letter uh, to the Department of Justice saying we want X number of agents and X number of linguists and X number of analysts to look at terrorism like Al Qaeda and those type of groups. That
Mhm.
gets rejected.
Again.
He he again he puts in an appeal, and I think that the appeal was rejected, and that letter back from the Attorney General's office ends up on Tom Picard's desk uh, like the week before 9/11.
Oh,
No, we're not going to do it. Now, Picard later testifies to the 9/11 Commission all of this, that we had done that, and they basically ignored it. So,
wow.
so that's kind of what happened, is that the Bureau was asking for help, and then the Bush administration pretty much ignored the presidential daily brief that says bin Laden determined to attack on U.S. soil. They just blew that off. So all of that goes without support, and then all of a sudden 9/11 happens.
So the Bush administration need to take some responsibilities about that
Oh, of course.
because, yeah,
Yeah.
because
Bush
they
and
have,
Cheney, no, no, no responsibility. Not their fault.
wow. So just like you said, we need to have a thorough investigation of 9/11. This is a much more complicated than what we know.
That's what I believe. There should be a full commission
Right.
to look at all of this and to try to determine, did Cheney and Rumsfeld and Bolton and the rest of the neocons want the U.S. attacked
Mhm.
on purpose, so
Mhm.
that they would be able to build up the war on terror and
Mhm.
have massive budgets for military and espionage and everything else.
Mhm.
And but they kind of wanted it.
Yeah. Don't forget about another Cheney, Liz Cheney. She's at J6 committee, which we need a thorough investigation too.
Yeah, that's much later, modern time, in the last couple of years. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see the interview with former Representative Curt Wetton. Yeah, right. Well, thank you so much. This is heavy. I need to take some time to digest that information about 9/11. Although I know there are some different opinions and views about 9/11, how it happened, what actually happened. But still, when you hear people uh, saying that 9/11 maybe have some other true story behind, it is really shocking, really. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much,
very.
Tom. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Tom. And just like you said, we'll keep our patient and we'll do our parts.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I'll see you next week. Thank you, Tom.
Okay. Take care.
Sure. Bye-bye.